Hi, this is Dominic Pace, who plays Gekko the Bounty Hunter from The Mandalorian, and you are listening to Star Wars Comics in Canon.
Hello there and welcome to Star Wars Comics in Canon, your guide to the wider Star Wars canon through the comic book lens. And to take you on this journey, I'm your host, Mike Burton. And so brings episode 50, and for the 50th episode of Star Wars Comics in Canon, we are doing a Q&A special, and I am joined by my girlfriend, Megan.
Hi. I won't be able to contribute that much to this, but I'm here and I'm living.
Yeah, basically decided to have Megan involved because there's a few questions that I would be interested to hear Megan's input on, and also it's good to have someone to read the questions to me, so I'm not just kind of standing or sat here by myself like I normally am, because most episodes of Star Wars Comics in Canon is I lock myself in our office with comic books and just chat nonsense for a long time.
And I knit.
And you knit is normally what happens while doing that.
We're a very cool couple.
Yeah, indeed. I also generally, I forgot to mention before recording, I generally don't swear in these episodes. I know in Genuine Chit-Chat and Afterthoughts we swear a lot. But in this, I generally don't. If you do, it's not a big deal, but I generally try to avoid it so any young listeners can hear the answer to questions without profanities.
That's fine. No profanities will be heard on the making of this podcast.
So yeah, we got about 12 or so questions, I think, from a variety of different people. We're going to kind of flip between people who asked them and the questions up and down and stuff. There's a couple of dad jokes that got sent in that I'm going to have to read out, which is going to be quite fun. But we're going to do them in 2 recordings, so they should all be released in one go on the feed, but we're probably going to record these first sort of 6 now, and then later on today or something we'll record another 6, because just sat still doing 12 questions is quite a lot.
On my Easter holidays.
On your Easter holidays, and while I'm off as well, so... And we've got other stuff to do today as well. So if the audio changes a little bit halfway through this, that's kind of why, because we're lazy and can't be asked to record everything all at once. So that basically leads us on to the questions. So Megan, did you want to get us going?
Well, we have a question from Matthew B. Lloyd, and his question is, why did they turn the old comics/novels into legends?
So this question comes from Matthew B. Lloyd, who does classic comics on this very feed of Comics in Motion. I think it's every other Monday. And he's a chap who's going to be coming on my show in a couple of weeks, actually, to talk about classic old school Star Wars comics. I think specifically talking about some of the newspaper strips, which I didn't even realise Star Wars had newspaper strips for like years and years. So you'd open the newspaper and there'd be like a few panels.
Oh, what? Like in an actual newspaper?
Yeah. Like there's a whole book, there's whole 2 books you can buy.
What kind of newspaper?
It's an American one.
Oh.
I can't remember which.
So
but this is in
the Telegraph.
No, but this is in the 70s. So you know we had Garfield, and all those things.
Okay.
You'd have a few Star Wars comics.
That's interesting.
It is cool. Apparently the stories are fairly good according to Matt. He says some of them are a bit weak, but there are some really cool ones in there. And I'm pretty certain they were around the time where they did the big multimedia launch. Well, after Star Wars came out and they had the holiday special as well, they obviously had the Star Wars comics that continued on, which are like all kinds of things. So,
to answer your question, Matt...
So really, it happened in 2014. Disney bought out Lucasfilm in 2014 and they decided to re-canonize things. So it's basically just... Canon means continuity in a sense. So it's basically what did, in air quotes, happen. So very simply, Disney took over and they wanted to do certain things. The big one was the sequel trilogy. They wanted to do, obviously, the 3 films that are now out. But there are 3 books that served as generally considered the sequel trilogy, which is where Thrawn was introduced. I'm pretty certain those books were sort of they're in the 80s and 90s, I'm pretty certain. And basically, the problem is with Legends is what happened was George Lucas let almost anyone play in his sandbox. So they basically did a thing where they had, I've shown you some of the older stuff, because we've been watching the Clone Wars 2D series. There's also like the Ewok films.
Can't wait to watch those bangers.
Infamous Ewok films.
Oh, I love the Ewoks.
Well, I mean, we watched the trailer for the Ewok film. I mean, what did you think of the trailer for that?
I mean, it doesn't look great. Like, the child looks, and I don't mean any disrespect to it. So this kid, if you're watching in the future, I doubt,
well, I mean,
maybe.
They're probably, what, like 50 or something now?
The kid is kind of scary looking. Like...
The little girl or the guy?
I think it's the little girl with the really curly hair.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's just because, like, Ewoks are cute, but they're also kind of scary looking, so...
I think in the films they become really brutal, if I remember. I think it's something...
Well, I mean, they're pretty savage in the original three
right?
films.
I think they're cannibals.
Well, I say 3 films. They're not in the 3 films. They're just in, was it episode 5?
And they eat people, didn't they? They were going to kill in...
Well, yeah, they're going to kill...
In Return of the Jedi, they're going to kill Han and Luke and cook them up for...
Delicious.
Yeah, so basically, Legends, the reason it mainly happened was because Disney wanted to redo stuff and not have it being massive contradictions to what had already existed. But the problem is with Legends, what a lot of people don't mention when they complain about the new Disney canon and all that sort of stuff, they complain about how there's so many other cool things in Legends that are amazing, but they don't mention how inconsistent it is. There's like a story where Chewie dies, and then there's another story where he's alive, and it's like, you can't... And the comics that were released in the 70s, there's a Marvel comic run straight after A New Hope came out that was kind of like a in-between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. But it was so old, that was before Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi even came out. So the problem is it's back in those days, I was looking up some stuff about this question, and there's actually, they had layers of the canon in, it used to be called the Expanded Universe, not Legends. And it was basically anything that wasn't the films was expanded in the Expanded Universe. And it was just, there were loads of contradictions, and they just wanted to clean it up and be able to have a clean slate. So rather than having like, the comics were like D canon at the point, which is like, you can take it, if anything is contradicted in by B canon, C canon, or A canon. So it's like core. So the films are like A canon, then B. Then...
God, that is so confusing.
That's what I mean. That's why they had to redo it. So they just went, right, screw all that, and we're just going to do everything is in Legends. Which basically, I look at it as Legends stuff is, it hasn't been proven to not happen yet. So I don't look at it in a sense of, oh no, there's no such thing. Like, this thing that happened in Legends didn't happen. I look at it and I'm like, well, if something contradicts it in the canon, it didn't happen.
This is the thing. It's just that, like, I understand all of the people that are, like, frustrated, upset, annoyed, etc., like, by the fact that Disney took over and then, well, they changed it, didn't they? So they changed all of the things that were already out there and said, no, this isn't part of the actual universe. Like, it is, but it's not, like, legit. And, like, I get that that's frustrating, but it needs to happen because... Like, one consistent thing throughout the entirety of Star Wars is that there are plot flaws.
Yeah.
And there are errors. So it makes sense for you to kind of just say, from this point here, now everything is going to be part of this franchise. Because otherwise, as you said, there's so many, like, inconsistencies that don't really fully make sense. And at least this way, they are trying to make it a solid universe as opposed to having, like, little, like, naffy bits here and there.
Yeah, because the thing is as well, is they use a lot of stuff from Legends in canon now. Like The Mandalorian gets praised a lot because they use certain elements like the Dark Troopers, the Crate Dragon, things like that. They're in Legends. So
yeah, and we were watching the 2D series, which is classed as Legends, and there's loads of bits in that are now part of, well, the 3D animated Clone Wars series.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
so it's not like they've completely abolished it and been like, nothing existed, none of this is real, none of these characters exist. At least they've taken, like, aspects from it and have contributed to what is now canon.
If there are questions that don't have answers to it in canon, so for example, I think one of them is Anakin Skywalker's scar. That was, I'm pretty certain, in the micro-series caused by Sarge Ventress. It was something like that. That's how he got the scar. But in canon, they haven't mentioned that. But that doesn't mean he didn't get the scar from Asajj. It means in Legends he did. So there's almost like the legend, the rumours are that he did. But you may hear new information that comes out that is more confirmed. Yeah. That's how I kind of look at it.
And didn't you say that in Legends, Asajj Ventress didn't even have a name?
I'm pretty certain she doesn't. When we watched it recently, I think I don't think she had like a full name, as from what I remember.
But like, there's a character that is in canon.
Yeah.
And it's not meant, she's not in any of the films, is she?
No.
She's not in any of the films. Is she mentioned in the films? No. So there you go. There's an example.
Yeah, so that's basically it. And we'll get more into, there's other questions about Legends and canon coming up soon. So I think we'll get on to the next question here, which is from our favourite guy in the world.
Tony Farina.
Of Indie Comic Spotlight.
So Tony Farina asks, do you think that Lucasfilm made a mistake selling to Disney? No.
You don't think that?
I don't think they do. I think it gives Star Wars a better ability and a better, like, scope for being able to put stuff out there. I don't think they would have had as many like, for example, like, we've had The Mandalorian, which is obviously when did Disney buy it?
2014. So it's when Rebels was on TV after series 1 or 2, I think.
Yeah. So we've got Mandalorian, we've got the Obi-Wan series coming out, Ahsoka series, there's the one with Warwick Davis in it.
Willow's not going to be Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
Disney Plus.
So ignore me for that one. But what other Star Wars ones are there?
Series 7 of Clone Wars came out through Disney. The Bad Batch is going to be through Disney.
Bad Batch,
and then obviously all the other series you've mentioned.
But yeah, so like all of those things I don't think would have been maybe possible Like, some of it would, because obviously Lucasfilm is such a big thing.
Yeah, they make their own films. They make all the Indiana Jones films.
Yeah, so it is a pretty big company.
Yeah.
Whereas Disney's bigger.
Yeah, Disney is absolutely
So
colossal.
I just think for people who like Star Wars and for people who want more Star Wars content, I think it was a better decision because it means that there's more money, so they can make more stuff.
Yeah, and I agree as well. And the thing is that when the way the expanded universe was working was that apart from the odd thing, it was mainly in games, books, and comics was where the expanded universe really came into play. That's what the big thing is. And the thing is with Lucasfilm selling to Disney, as you say, they've got the opportunities. Like, if it was under Lucasfilm, we'd be lucky if we'd have got a sequel trilogy. But even if we did, we wouldn't have got sequel trilogy, Mandalorian, Bad Batch, Visions that's coming out, the Ahsoka series, Acolyte, Kenobi.
Acolyte, that's the other one.
Yeah, Kenobi, Rangers of the New Republic, all of those things.
And then there's that new Rogue
Squadron.
That's
a film coming out.
Have you said that?
No, I haven't. A good point. I missed that one out. Also, we got, Solo, Rogue One, and the sequel trilogy. And even though the sequel trilogy were flawed, I still enjoyed them. But I think it's a good idea because, as Megan says, it gives them more scope. It gives them more of an ability to release more content. Star Wars is an idea and it's a franchise, and it means that loads of independent creators can go in there and create stuff in the world. Like Taika Waititi, he's making the film of Kathleen Kennedy.
And I love him.
He's the best. Obviously, Thor Ragnarok is a film that you always mention you love. And it's like, without it being owned by Disney, I don't know if we'd have that. And also, Disney Plus is really good, but without all the new Star Wars content on there, I wouldn't be subscribed to Disney Plus. Now it's got the other Marvel stuff.
Yeah, I mean, now it's got more on there, but like if it was just like Disney films and like the Star Wars movie, well, I mean, if we're arguing that the Star Wars movies weren't bought by Disney, then they wouldn't be on there. I don't realistically think that Disney would have been able to do Disney Plus if they didn't have all of the Star Wars movies, and the fact that they now have Marvel as well. It's just, this is what I mean. Like, Disney's massive. It's basically trying to monopolize the market. So
they are, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a good idea. I'm sorry for the haters.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good idea for...
But then I'm not also, like, I mean...
You don't know anything about Legends.
I don't know anything about Legends, really.
I don't know that much. That's the thing here, is that
I feel like most of the people that are kind of upset by the fact that Disney bought it are people that are older than us.
Yes.
They're people that, like, that watched Star Wars, for example, when it first came out in the cinema.
Yeah, or they were young, they are sort of age around the prequel era.
Yeah, and I know I've said this on your podcast so many times, so I'm sorry if you're someone who's listening and you're hearing me say this again, and I'm sorry to Mike because he's heard me say it 1,000 times, but less so now. But when I used to think about Star Wars, I thought about the Phantom Menace, because that's what I grew up with.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're someone that associates Star Wars with the original trilogy, then I think your mindset will probably be a bit different.
Yeah, because at those times you had the books that came out and the comics that all kind of intertwined like it does now, but you had it for 30 years.
And it also depends on how much of a Star Wars fan you are.
Yeah, and how far you're into it. But most people who've just seen the films don't really care. Most of our friends don't really care. They just, like, they've asked me, they go, oh, is the new game canon? I was like, yeah, basically everything released now is canon.
Because Fallen Order was canon, wasn't it?
Yeah. Fallen Order's canon, Battlefront 2's canon, Squadrons is canon. They've got another game coming out this year, 1313, which is a bounty hunter game that people thought was cancelled before. But actually, it was cancelled, and then they basically they've redone it, and it's all bounty hunter-esque, so I imagine it will have certain elements of Mandalorian things in it. But yeah, it was a good idea. They had way more opportunities and stuff, so I think we would say it's a good thing. It wouldn't, without Disney behind it, we wouldn't get so much cool stuff.
Yeah.
And Legends still exists. There's the big thing. They still re-release Legends stuff, like literally right now.
Yeah, it's not like they've abolished it off the face of the earth and said no one's going to access any of this stuff anymore. Like, they're still there.
They've even put it on Disney Plus. It's called Star Wars Vintage, they've called it.
Yeah.
That's basically Legends.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. They're still using it. So there we go, everyone.
So the next question.
Okay, so question 3 is from Dave Horrocks.
He is the podfather of the Comics Emotional Network with Chris Phelps. He's the one who started this whole thing off and invited me to do the Star Wars show. So thank you, Dave.
I apologise for saying your name incorrectly. I'm reading Mike's handwriting.
Yeah, my handwriting is pretty terrible. So what's this question?
So, what are your thoughts on Jar Jar Binks being a Sith Lord?
Well, this actually comes from...
Whenever this comes up, it always makes me laugh.
It's a weird conspiracy in Star Wars, which I kind of feel the same way about it that I do feel about Kennedy, the Kennedy assassination. I don't think it's like an inside job, but I think there's a lot of some weird stuff around it we don't fully know. And that's how I feel about the Jar Jar Binks. I think not everything is as what they seem.
So, yeah.
Because like with the original idea, they say that where this all came from was that after the backlash of Phantom Menace and the amount of backlash was targeted at Jar Jar, they basically said, okay, the script got rewritten, and Ahmed Best, who's the guy who plays Jar Jar, who now also does the Jedi Temple Challenge, that kid's sort of game thing, and he's starting to do little bits and pieces here, voicing characters and certain audio things and whatnot. He played Jar Jar, and he says that a lot of his lines were cut, and the whole where the character was going changed, but he's not allowed to talk about it. And having the fact that all of his lines got cut shortly after would insinuate either they were going to have Jar Jar and it still being silly, or a lot of people thought they were going down the route of when Yoda was really stupid and weird in episode 5 when you first saw him, and that was kind of testing Luke. They would say that the other way around, kind of like he's pretending to be this fool, even though everything he does actually seemingly he survives and he manages to always get out of situations by seeming like an idiot, when in reality he actually manages to get out of these situations because he specifically wanted to.
It's because he's Darth Binks.
Well, that's the idea. So what do you think? Do you think that's possible? Or?
I think it's plausible. I mean, like, if you think about Palpatine, like, he's, senator, then chancellor, and then emperor, whatever he is. Mm-hmm. And, like, a lot of people think that he's nice. Obviously, to be honest, like, you're looking at him and you're like, nah, you're obviously evil. Yeah. Like, even when you watch it, if you've literally never watched Star Wars before, you know that he's the baddie. Yeah. Like, it's pretty obvious. Yeah. So I think, but my point is that in the films, people are obviously oblivious to this until like episode 3, which is crazy. But I think it could work. I think that because obviously he gives ultimate power to the Chancellor. Yeah. In episode 2. Yes. When obviously that was like the worst decision that he could have possibly made. Yeah. And it's just based on the fact that he's stupid. Yeah. And also, like, if you see him in episode 1, he's just a bumbling buffoon, and then suddenly he's like a general because he did one good thing, but even that good thing was done out of clumsiness. Yeah, and then he's leading people into battle, and then suddenly he's speaking in front of the entire Senate on behalf of Padme, no? Yeah. So it's just like, does he have that influence? Like, is it just sheer fluky luck that he gets there, or is it because there is something more sinister going on? So I think it could be a thing.
Release the Jar Jar Binks cut.
Yeah, release the Jar Jar Binks cut.
I don't know how I'd feel about it. I think the problem is they went too hard on it.
They went too hard on the stupidity in the first film, like him standing in poo and making like poo jokes.
If they had just one scene where what happened was he spoke to someone and he killed them off screen or something, and he spoke really normally. Like, if there was just one scene where he off-screen, but you see him kind of go off and no one else is around him, and he speaks to maybe even, like, Palpatine over the thing, and he goes, his posture changes, and he goes, like, straightens up, and he stops talking so weirdly.
Yeah, like little mannerisms.
Yeah, and he just starts going, Misa, blah, 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 and he was like, yes, Master, Misa going to assist you in this. Like, proper, complete change. Yeah. I think they might have been able to get away with it.
Like, if he speaks like the leader of the Gungans. Yeah. Because he doesn't speak, like, he speaks differently, but not, like, in a stupid way like Jar Jar does.
Exactly. Like, anything like that, I think it could have worked. But I think that if they released Phantom Menace the way it got released, and then tried to do an Attack of the Clones, I don't know how well that would land.
I think it would have been the case that we wouldn't have seen it, a character arc that showed that the progression into that position. I think because there is no real character arc to Jar Jar, like, it's just him being stupid, and then suddenly in the next film he's like serious and he's part of the Senate. Yeah. And it's just like, I don't think it would have worked because you hadn't seen that progression into it.
I'd be intrigued if they released like a 4-part comic series or something like they've got that Marvel, they've got the What If series coming out, which is it's all going to be about the MCU. If they veered into Star Wars and did that and did like a little, just even if it's like a half an hour of like animation thing of what would happen if Jar Jar was actually a Sith Lord and he was. And he worked in the way that people originally thought.
The thing is that
it would be interesting to see it.
Isn't there a rule of 2, though, with the Sith? There can only be 2 at a time.
Well, this is where what would happen was people believe that Count Dooku wouldn't have been a thing.
Yeah, well, that is the thing, isn't it? Because then, in theory, Jar Jar would have been the
Jar Jar would
apprentice.
have fought them at
Jar
the
Jar
end.
would have been the apprentice.
Could you imagine Jar Jar fighting them at the end of Attack of the Clones, and then fighting Yoda, and him being like, "You've been trained." Like they wouldn't have that sort of relationship of Dooku being the master of Qui-Gon who trained Obi-Wan, and being the apprentice of being the Padawan of Yoda. Like,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have that dynamic with them if you had Jar Jar in it. Because
Although saying that, like, I mean, Dooku's training Asajj Ventress as his apprentice,
as a Sith assassin, so that's the kind of caveat.
but it's still Sithy.
Yeah.
So there are loopholes to it.
Yes, there are.
So in theory, Jar Jar Binks could be like Asajj Ventress.
Yeah, but he wouldn't be able to be called Darth, because Darth is a strictly Sith title.
Yeah.
So Dooku is Darth Tyrannus. You've got Darth Maul and Darth Sidious. Sidious is trained by Plagueis. Then Plagueis gets killed by Sidious. Sidious then trains up Maul.
So when
Maul
Darth
dies, and then he takes on Tyrannus.
Yeah, but he doesn't actually die.
Yeah.
But when we see Maul for the first time in
Clone
the
Wars.
Clone Wars series,
Yeah.
is he still called Darth Maul?
He just calls himself Maul.
He just calls himself Maul. Okay.
Yeah, especially by Rebels, he literally just doesn't even go by the Darth title. In fact, I think Ahsoka or calls him Darth Maul. He says, I'm not Darth anymore.
Yeah, he says that's a really old name or something.
Yeah, it's a title of the Sith. It's like Jedi.
Okay,
it's like
that's
Master
fine.
Kenobi.
So
Darth
yeah, I
Vader.
guess he wouldn't be able to be Darth Binkus, which is what people say his Sith name would be. So I guess based on the fact that we have Dooku, he can't be, but maybe he can be like an Asajj Ventress type thing.
They'd either do that or they'd write out Dooku. That would be the simple.
Yeah, but then it wouldn't be canon.
No, but if we're talking about like if they had to release a cut that would work, that would be a whole different. This question is more. Well, the question was just like, what are your thoughts? I mean, I was thinking more so like if they actually did Star Wars with Jar Jar being the Sith Lord instead of Dooku the whole time, would that work? I think it probably would have worked better than people maybe think it would if it was done the right way. But the problem is that the biggest flaw in Attack of the Clones is the dialogue and the direction of the character emotion. And if Jar Jar had like bad, cheesy dialogue, it would just be one of those things where I wouldn't want. It would then ruin it even further. Like, Phantom Menace's biggest fault is Jar Jar, then Attack of the Clones' biggest fault is the Padme and Anakin dialogue. But imagine if you had Attack of the Clones with the Padme and Anakin dialogue, but also with loads of Jar Jar stuff. It wouldn't work properly.
Yeah, I do agree.
So, I don't know. I think it could have been a thing.
I think it could be a thing as like an extra little special thing, but I don't think it's something that could have happened because Jar Jar's a moron. And like with this question, my mum, I don't know if she was joking, but she asked me, here's a question from Mike's podcast, is why does everyone hate Jar Jar? My answer is just watch the first film. And then you'll see why everyone hates Jar Jar.
Yeah, he gets worse as you get older. That's the thing. Kids do still like him.
Yeah, I remember liking him when I was a kid.
Yeah, it's one of those things.
Now, every time I watch The Phantom Menace, I despise every scene with him in more and more.
He gets worse, the rest of the film gets better.
Yeah.
Each rewatch.
Right, so question 4 is like a double one. So Tony Farina asks, would you like to see Star Wars crossover into Marvel? And it kind of links with another question, which is from Frank Burton, and his podcast is Ragbag Presents. He asked about Star Wars crossovers, whether they would be a possible thing, for example, with Doctor Who, because he can cross into any time or space. Yes. So I'm combining those two questions because they're similar.
Yeah. So both Tony and Frank asked about crossovers, and one said Doctor Who and one said Marvel.
I think it would be cool.
I think it could really work. I think Doctor Who would be an absolutely insanely well done thing if you could make it work. I think Marvel would feel too much like corporate gimmicks forcing something that doesn't work necessarily, even though I would love to see that. I think that doing it with Marvel, although it's probably more likely maybe in like decades to come, I feel like Doctor Who would be like an event that it'd be undeniable. Like the amount of people who just generally like Star Wars and the amount of people who just generally like Doctor Who is like across the world. Yeah. They're like both such international things.
I think it would be cool if they did like a special.
Yeah.
So like a 1 hour special episode, kind of like, in Doctor Who where they have the Christmas special or I think it would be quite cool if they did a special where there was a crossover into Doctor Who or a crossover into Marvel. And you don't have to, as you said, call it canon. It's just an extra little...
Or you do what they did in Clone Wars in the Mortis arc. When they went there and they did the whole thing, they basically then forgot about it straight after. They kind of woke up in the ship after going to Mortis and seeing all the Force gods and all that prophecy stuff.
Oh, yeah. Is that the bit with the owl?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They go there and meet the sister, the brother, and the father.
Yeah.
The Force entities and things, and like
Yeah.
afterwards, that still has an impact on certain aspects, especially with Ahsoka. But like
The thing with that,
they don't really remember it.
Yeah, it could work, but then it kind of also just feels like to me, it's like, and then I woke up from a dream.
Well, that's the problem. That's the thing with the canon stuff. You'd probably have to put it into almost Star Wars Vintage on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Or
if they were to do it, it would have to be a completely Legends thing. It would be not canon whatsoever.
Well, first of all, do you think, before we say what would be cool, do you think it would actually be possible? Do you think in our lifetime we're going to see Marvel do a crossover? Keeping in mind that there's like Lego Holiday Special. So I think the next step is probably going to be Lego holiday stuff with both Marvel and also Star
Yeah, because I
Wars.
mean in Lego, there's always crossovers, isn't there? When it's the normal Lego ones.
In the Lego Star Wars games, you can play as the character Indiana Jones. And
Yeah,
that
I don't
sort
know.
of thing.
I think it's something that could happen. I think it would be cool. I would enjoy it.
Lego would be fun and quite easy to do, but I think realistically,
It would definitely
it's
be.
gonna be
It would be a
50 years.
cartoon.
it's going to be
sure.
Yeah, it's going to be like 50 years or something stupid. It's going to be some sort of massive, ridiculous anniversary that's going to somehow fall on both of them having like a major anniversary. Like one of them is like its 130th, and the other one is like its.
I just feel like Doctor Who is not as big anymore.
It has dwindled.
It's dwindled a bit. So I think with Doctor Who, like, if they were to do it, it would be a case of it having to pick up a little bit again.
Well, this would be the thing that make it pick up.
Oh yeah, true.
Yeah.
Because obviously Marvel and Star Wars are always kind of like riding on a high. Like, I mean, this year there's things coming out, like 2 or 3 series for each respective franchise.
Yeah, the thing.
So if they did a crossover, it would make sense. I just think with Doctor Who, for example, although it would be sick, it would be so cool.
Yeah.
I don't think I see that one happening as much.
I tell you what I would love. I would love a David Tennant Doctor Who.
This is what I'm thinking.
Interacting with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan
Yeah.
before Phantom Menace and going on an adventure with them and either Billy Piper or Freema Agyeman.
See, this is the thing, is that with Doctor Who, I think of Doctor Who and I think of David Tennant. And obviously David Tennant's not ever going to be the Doctor again.
Well, I know he's in Star Wars, but he's the voice of the robot who helps the younglings build their lightsabers, which there's rumours that he's going to be in one of the live-action series.
So it's, I don't know. This is the thing, is with Doctor Who for me specifically, it's not as good as it once was because David Tennant played that role so well.
Yeah, because there's the 2 parts of Doctor, isn't there? There's the old school Doctor and the new, not quite a reboot, but like the continuation from 2005. Christopher Eccleston, David Tennant, Matt Smith, Peter Capaldi, and now it's Jodie. It's not Foster.
I literally don't even know. I stopped watching during the season of Matt Smith.
I stopped at Matt Smith.
So
just around that point.
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea, but I don't see it happening. But I see more. Yeah, I think, as you said, with Lego. If they did it with Lego, I think that would be quite cool.
I think that'd be the next step, and then I think they might do, as you say, like some sort of crazy special that's just like a non-canon. You know, say at the start, this is not canon events. It's just something for fun, and you have like the Doctor and interacting with the Force, and maybe he's like a. Maybe he even learns to use the Force in some way, and he's like a Jedi, and you get like a Doctor who's the Jedi, and his screwdriver turns to a lightsaber. Like that would be amazingly sick. But aside from that, I'm not sure how long it's going to be until we see Star Wars interact with other universes. The thing is it's just such a insular thing. It's so massive. It doesn't need to go into other universes, because if you want a character like Iron Man, you just create the equivalent of an Iron Man.
That's the thing. Is
in
that
Star Wars,
yeah, I
so
guess
versatile.
Yeah, I guess Star Wars has such big lore that.
And every planet is completely different. You can just create a planet in the middle of nowhere and just have it with a race of people who are exactly how the story wants it to be. That's the thing with Star Wars. It's not like a planet.
I can't imagine seeing like people from Star Wars on Earth, for example, if I were to watch it. I can't imagine that. But yeah, I don't know.
Earth is in Legends. I can't remember how much.
Oh, really?
I think it's either vaguely mentioned or is one sort of story. I'm pretty sure it doesn't appear much. I may be wrong there, but I recall looking it up, and I don't think it's in many things.
Okay, well, that was a long, rambly answer, and I'm sorry. So, this is another question from Matthew B. Lloyd. Who keeps up with the continuity at Lucasfilm?
So Lucasfilm have a story group. Specifically, it's a whole department of Lucasfilm that are specifically, their job is to talk to the creators of XYZ and say to them, you can do this, this, and this, but you can't do this and this. Claudia Gray, when I spoke to her with the interview I had with her, she said when she wrote the Lost Stars book, the ending, she wanted a Star Destroyer to explode, and she couldn't. They said, oh, instead of that, could you have it crash on a planet called Jakku? Can you just have the space battle that you're planning on having outside Jakku, just for one reason or another, and have that ship crash on there? She was like, yeah, sure. And then they didn't tell her much more than that, and then she watched Force Awakens opening night at the cinema or whatever, and the ship was on. Obviously, it's what Rey goes past in like one of the first scenes, and she was like, that's the Star Destroyer I crashed. Like, how cool is that?
But the real question is, Mike, why does everyone want to go back to Jakku?
Why does everyone want to go back to Jakku? There's a guy called Pablo Hidalgo, and he is like the top guy at the Story Group, and he's the one who writes the majority of the visual dictionaries that you can buy. Because
Okay.
I've got, there's a few I've bought.
Yeah, Mike went on a massive visual dictionary spurging spree in the works.
It was Spurging Spree, yeah. We went to the shop, and it was basically...
There were a lot there for
It was like
discounted prices.
£3 and a fiver.
Yeah.
So it cost me like 11 quid for 3 of them. And they're normally between 15 and 25 quid each. So it was just like £11 for Solo, Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. So I read the Solo one while we were...
Watching Solo.
Yeah, and to point out some of the cool things that I missed in obviously the first time. But Pablo Hidalgo, he's the one who writes all the visual dictionaries, and they're the things that are like the loose connective tissue, that just kind of vague backstories of characters and whatnot, giving things names and etc. And so he basically just communicates with certain parts. Like, the problem is with Rise of Skywalker and Force Awakens in some way, was the rumours were that J.J. Abrams didn't talk to the Story Group very much. So when stuff was coming out, Force Awakens wasn't as much of a big deal because he could kind of do what he wanted. But then when Rise of Skywalker came out, he said he put certain things in there that didn't jive with the canon, and they've had to release content to kind of force it in. Like, for example, Poe Dameron being a spice runner on that planet. Like, halfway through, he talks to that girl with a helmet on, Zori, I think her name is, and it's like, oh, you ran off after being a spice runner to join the Resistance. And there's like a whole comic series and a whole thing all about how he didn't do that. There was no mention of him being a spice runner. He basically just joined the Republican Navy and then got into the Resistance from that way. And so what they had to then do is release a book after Rise of Skywalker came out, explaining the really in-depth timeline of how and why he basically was a spice runner before joining it. And it's called Free Fall or something, I think. And it's basically about his time there and how it fits in. And it's just like, because J.J. Abrams didn't talk to the Story Group enough and could have just added one throwaway line just to say, I didn't go straight into the Resistance after the spice running. I actually joined I joined the Republican Navy and then went into the Resistance after that.
Or even just like, it was a bad couple of years before I joined the Navy.
Yeah, so easy. You'd have to have one line just from consulting the Story Group. And that's what the Story Group meant to do. When you make these big monumental things that are the movies, you have to consult with them in a certain way. And Mandalorian did that absolutely loads, which is why you've got characters like Cobb Vanth, who is the guy who has Boba Fett's armor at the start of Series 2. He is in the Aftermath books. He tells you how you get the armor, and it's more or less the same thing as what they say in, like, it's a few small details tweaked, but it's generally speaking, it's the same as what is in the book. So it's because they read the content, they know about it, and the patches in their knowledge that they didn't know, they want to get right, so they talk to the Story Group.
Yeah.
And so it's just basically a company in all the comics and books, less of the books, sorry, in all the comics, you open the page, it's got all the credits, and there's always someone to do the Story Group attached to it, just to make sure the comics don't completely
go rogue,
disregard another comic that's going on at the same time that's on a parallel story and stuff.
Okay, so going on to question 6.
So the final one in this part.
This is the final one of this part. This is from Chris Bratton, sorry.
Chris Bratton of the I Like to Like Things podcast, which I'm going to be appearing on in a few months' time when it gets released. I think he's going to come on Genuine Chit-Chat at some point, and we're going to chat about stuff. He's a big Star Wars fan, so what's his question?
Well, his question is, what meal or beverage that's been on the screen in the Star Wars universe would you like to try the most? And he personally wants to try spotchka. What's spotchka? Right,
so I had to look this stuff up to remind myself. So spotchka it's a luminescent blue drink, and it's made from krill, like the stuff that whales eat, the tiny, like, microscopic plankton almost. Krill brewed, and it's seen in the Mandalorian show. Okay. So that's where you first see it. So I looked up a few things because I had a vague recollection of certain.
I just want to try the
foods.
blue milk.
The blue milk is on here. Yep, the blue milk from you see it first in New Hope, and you can get it at Galaxy's Edge. There's a lot of foods that you can actually get. At Galaxy's Edge.
There's a Galaxy's Edge cookbook.
Yeah.
Because I want to buy it. Because just out of like, I'd probably not make that much stuff from it, but just for fun, I really want to get it.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So I've written up a few things. There's one roasted pork.
Oh no!
That Chewie has in Last Jedi. I would eat that.
To be fair, I think a roasted pork would be delicious.
I mean, porgs are adorable and I love them, but
they're cute but annoying, aren't they?
Yeah, I would definitely eat one of those. One of them as well, there's the Jogan fruit and the Melu Run fruit, which I think you can find them both on Lothal, but one of them is meant to be like a superfood almost. And there's just a couple which you can cook or you can eat raw. There's a couple of fruits that I wouldn't mind trying, like Star Wars fruits. They wouldn't taste anything like we would understand because they'd be made of different planets and stuff. So, and the other one is actually in the Force Awakens. When Rey goes to Unkar Plutt and gets the portions, she trades all the scrap metal and he gives her that weird little packet and she pours water on it and it turns into that muffin thing. That's called portioned bread. And fun fact about that isn't CGI. That's not computer generated. That's
science.
Yeah, they actually literally did a thing where you can pour a certain water on it and it makes that fluffy thing. Cool. I'm not 100% sure if it was edible. I have a feeling it might have been, but I can't really remember exactly what it was.
That's a cool little thing, isn't it? Yeah,
so when you see her in Force Awakens Episode 7, go back and watch it if you can't remember. pour it on there. It's actually real, no special effects. And it is special effects, but it's the sort of... It's science. It's not CGI.
It's not CGI, it's just science. Generated.
So yeah, I would like to try those things. I mean, there's also in Galaxy's Edge, there are a lot of meals, which is like a roasted Luma or Tauntaun and things like that, where...
You can eat a Lothcat.
I'm not sure you can eat Lothcats. I don't think they sell that there. But it's good remembering the animal Lothcat. Yeah, they feature in the Doctor Aphra comics, and they also obviously in Rebels as well.
Because they live on Lothal.
But yeah, I think Blue Milk's the fun one.
Yeah, I want to try Blue Milk. Blue Milk is kind of the equivalent of like Harry Potter's butterbeer, isn't it?
Yeah, which we've tried as well, which you did not like and I love.
No, I hate it.
It's like cream soda-y sort of stuff.
Gross.
It's lovely. Oh, beautiful. But yeah, so that's basically it for part 1. We'll probably record the next either later today or tomorrow. So we'll be back soon for questions from the same people. Try to be quiet.
So you think I sounded like Muttley then?
Yeah, I think you did. Well, you know, I'm going to keep them recording in. Anyway, so part 2 of the Q&A. Q&A part 1 was yesterday. Q&A part 2 is today.
Too much Star Wars for me in one go.
It was a lot. Also, we had stuff to do. But to start this one off, we've got 9 questions for part 2. And to begin with, we're going to start off with a couple of dad jokes because I am Jack's Musings, one of the powerful people who is not only on Comics in Motion, does the show Binging Buffy with Tony monthly, also has his own reviews, Jack's Musings and things, and yeah, his Twitter is at I am Jack's Musings. And so these are his dad jokes, so I'm reading them out.
And I haven't heard these yet either.
You haven't? No, so there's 3 of them that he put in, so big up to Jack's Musings. So, these are some jokes that Jack's Musings wrote for his super son, some dad jokes, so here we go. Where did Han take Chewie when he got sick?
Where?
Boba Vett's.
Oh my god.
Here's another one. What is Jabba's favourite breed of dog?
What?
Poodoo.
Poodoo?
It's a word for poo and Huttese.
Sorry, that one went over my head, but I'm sure bigger fans would appreciate it.
I'm not sure they would. Sorry, Jack. And then also, what did Obi-Wan do when Luke couldn't get the lid off his blue milk bottle?
What?
He forced it.
Oh my lord.
So there we go. Those are the comedic genius.
I enjoyed
Jack.
them.
Yeah, he sent over some Star Wars questions as well. And in fact, we're starting with one of them. So shall we hit this? Let's go. Let's do it.
All right, let's get pumped. So, from I Am Jack's Musings, the first question is, what is the best sequence from canon so far?
And he says, why is it the first scene in Return of the Jedi, Episode 6? So when he gets to like Jabba's palace and stuff, he says that's the best one. Which I think is a pretty fair shout. It is one of my favourites, but it's not my favourite all-time sequence in all of Star Wars. What would yours be, including the movies and everything, just generally? Because there's a couple of questions that go deeper into certain aspects. So just in general, is there a favourite sequence when you watch either the Star Wars or Clone Wars or whatever, your favourite thing to see?
So, I think from the movies, it would be probably maybe what you're going to say, to be honest.
What?
I don't know if you are going to say this, but is in Episode 3 when Anakin and Obi-Wan are like facing each other off on Mustafar.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I really like it. I think it's just because, first of all, you really like it. So I've seen it quite a lot.
Yeah.
But also, like, I find that I like the things that I can quote.
Yeah.
And that's something that I enjoy quoting. And if I enjoy doing it, then it's something that
Yeah, there are a lot of lines.
I like.
You
So
know, I have a high ground, you're my brother Anakin, lots of parts like that.
And I think it's just a really cool sequence to see how, like, it's kind of the end of Anakin.
Yeah.
And then the start of Vader. Within the other realm of canon, so, like, including the Clone Wars series and stuff, it would probably be when Ahsoka sees Darth Vader for the first time. Because obviously...
In Rebels.
In Rebels, yeah, because...
Very, very minor spoilers, but it's when you watch Rebels. Before,
Are we allowed to do spoilers?
Yeah.
Okay, spoiler.
It's a spoiler for Rebels. It's not a major spoiler. We won't say everything explicitly that happens in the whole scene to ruin it, but Ahsoka does confront Vader at some point in Star Wars Rebels. And obviously Anakin was Ahsoka's master in the Clone Wars.
It's just so goddamn good. And I remember throughout the entirety of watching the stuff, I was just like... I really want to see Ahsoka see Darth Vader. Like, I want them to meet. And, like, I was continuously saying that. I was like, when is this going to happen? Like, I want to see it happen. And then when it did happen, I got a lot of satisfaction out of it, especially the first time watching it. I really liked that.
It is a very, very powerful scene. Those two scenes are two of my favourite scenes in all of Star Wars as well. I think the Mustafar battle in episode 3 is all this build up. I think if the Order 66 montage is one of my favourites as well, because the music is so harrowing and it's so brutal and upsetting to watch, where the prequel trilogy is fairly light-ish. Like, generally, it's not, especially with Jar Jar in the first one and things like that. And then it all culminates and becomes episode 3, which is so strong and there's so much darkness in it and everything is so hard hitting. So I'd be inclined to agree there. My also favourite scene is probably in Return of the Jedi, when Luke fights Vader. And he basically lets the dark side in a little bit. And then he beats Vader because Vader's weakened by the fact that he's fighting his son and he doesn't really want to kill him and stuff. And he's all conflicted. And Luke taps into the dark side and he's like smashing Vader. And Vader's like on the floor holding his lightsaber up, like basically ready to die. And Luke is just slamming his saber down like angrily again and again on his thing. And then obviously he slices his hand off.
Yeah.
It's just that moment where it's like Luke could have very easily killed Vader there. And it's that moment where he decides not to, which makes him different from Anakin. And that's like a big turning point, both if you look at the original trilogy in its own, but also if you look at the whole saga. Like the three kind of the biggest points in Star Wars for me are in episode 3, when Anakin becomes the Vader we know from the confrontation with Obi-Wan, Order 66, the extermination of the Jedi, and when Luke decides not to kill Vader. They're probably my 3 favourite parts.
Do you know what? Speaking of another one with Luke, and this is a spoiler for The Mandalorian Season 2, so if you haven't seen that, don't listen to this.
People should know about it by now.
You should know. It's been out long enough. I really like the bit where Luke Skywalker turns up and just kills loads of droids, and like Baby Yoda, also known as Grogu, but will forever be Baby Yoda in my heart. Yeah. Is just there, and you could just see everyone else in like the cockpit, and then
the bridge,
in the bridge, like where they drive the ship.
Yeah,
and then you've got they can just see it on the security camera, and they don't know who it is. They don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, and everyone's just kind of on edge. I really like that as well.
Yeah, that's one of the cool. That is held as one of the coolest. I think that's going to go down in Star Wars history as one of the best moments in Star Wars, because it's just the music is incredible, and the way it drip feeds you, and every fan knew it was Luke at a different point. Like,
well, I mean, realistically, it had to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of speculation. I even said in one of my videos, when people were asking me about what I think is going to happen, and I said I'm pretty sure Luke's going to appear. I was like, in The Mandalorian, everyone was basically like, Luke is the only Jedi really who we know is about, which isn't Ahsoka, but Ahsoka doesn't quite class herself as a Jedi. Luke's the only one we know for absolute certainty is about and is ready to go. They didn't. It could have been Ezra, but I think in the Ahsoka series, it's going to go into the whole kind of synopsis of Ahsoka as her finding out what happened to Ezra and stuff and Rebels. So I think that him coming was a big. It was going to be him all along, but it was still just breathtaking when he appeared.
It was Agatha all along.
It was Agatha all along.
So we had a few moments there. So, right, question 2 is from Matthew B. Lloyd. Have you ever found continuity errors in the new canon?
So there's 2 answers in this, in part. There's one which is really minor stuff that doesn't really make any difference to anyone, and then there's more major stuff. Now, there's also... It depends on how one wants to define it, because there's certain parts which is like the new canon, in air quotes, is basically anything after 2014. So it's basically the sequel trilogy is in including the new canon. Now, in the sequel trilogy, there are little bits and pieces. I mentioned one earlier, which was when Poe Dameron talks to, I think it's Zori.
About the spice running.
About the spice running and about all that sort of stuff. And it is all like that doesn't really fit, but they wrote a book to make it fit. There's other small ones, things like in the original trilogy in A New Hope, I think it's General Moff. It's either Moffee or it's Tague. It's either, Grand Admiral Moffee or Tague, but he says to Vader, he says something about you and your ancient religion, and it's been like 20 years. And it's just a bit like, is 20 years old enough for something to be considered ancient, even with all the propaganda? Probably not. But specifically in the new canon, there's a book called Ahsoka that came out, and it was made before season 7 of the Clone Wars was even ever something on the cards. Because Clone Wars, they were meant to do a certain amount of seasons, it got cut short, so there's certain arcs they couldn't do. They turned some of them into books and comics, and then other ones they just used when years and years later Clone Wars Series 7 was being made, they used it for that, and other stuff is going to probably be used in the Bad Batch as well. In the Ahsoka book, it talks about her, as flashbacks of her fighting Maul, and she talks about her green lightsabers, and obviously in Clone Wars Season 7 she actually has blue lightsabers because Anakin changed them. That's a minor thing. It doesn't ruin the book, it doesn't even ruin anything, it's one throwaway line, and then one could just argue, her memory was wrong. She forgot it differently because it's her recalling a time. There's that. There's in certain comics. There's one comic which has just certain panels. They call this commander. Other times they call them general. Other times they call them admiral, and they just don't consistently call them the same rank. That's a minor thing that happens. And then there's also, I've said about Poe Dameron, and I think Star Wars Annual number 3 is a one-off comic where it's meant to be Luke meeting Sana Starros, and it's meant to, I think the synopsis says it's meant to take place around the 8th comic or something, but they meet in the 6th comic.
Right.
Like the first time. So it's just, there's lots of, in the comic.
Classed really more as a typo than a...
Yeah, that sort of thing, which is kind of like when two characters meet and then they're meant to have met before this event, but they actually met after it or something along those lines. You just got to choose which one fits the best and either go, okay, well this comic says it was set now, really it was set 2 weeks later, or the character said something stupid that they didn't mean. You know, it's one of those things.
But there's no big ones.
Not really. There's no massive ones. I mean, in the sequel trilogy, there's parts where it's like, you know, with the whole Palpatine controlling Snoke stuff. That still hasn't really been explained very well, where it's basically like, so Snoke had his own
with all the like weird little jars of Snokes. That's a bit...
And it's like, and Palpatine says to Kylo, like, I've always been the voice inside your head. But they said in The Force Awakens, I think the idea was when he was touching Vader's helmet, he was having like mini Force visions, kind of like Leia, kind of like Rey had when she touched Anakin's lightsaber in The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
But it's just like, but if Palpatine says, I've been every voice in your head, and then it does a little montage where he hears Vader's, then Snoke's, and blah, blah, you'd go, well, if that was Palpatine, does that then undo the other stuff of Kylo?
Unless it was Palpatine putting on a voice of all those different people.
Well, that's what they insinuate.
Because he can obviously manipulate people's heads.
Well, that's what they're insinuating. So does that mean that Kylo wasn't having Force visions, and it was just Palpatine? So that questions, can he fit? You know, there's all these little things. It's basically just with Palpatine returning and Kylo Ren not being a Sith. That's the big problem, because the thing is that Snoke says he's not a Sith. But if he was being controlled by Palpatine all the time, and Palpatine is a Sith, then is he not a Sith then by proxy? And that's what Kylo Ren kind of is then? It's just, it gets muddy and things don't really make sense when the relationship between Snoke and Kylo in 7 and 8, when they make it so that basically Palpatine was behind all of it, you're just like, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't add up. So things like that are kind of annoying. That's why Rise of Skywalker is one of my least favourite of the films. I still prefer it, I think, to Phantom Menace and maybe Attack of the Clones, but it's the problem is there are certain plot points that you can't just kind of glaze over. Like the comment about ancient religion, you could say either the propaganda or he's saying the word ancient when really it means a couple of decades, but he's saying it in an attacking way.
Yeah.
Like there's lots of little ways you can get around things, like when Leia says she can remember what her mother looked like, even though she saw her for like 1 second. But in the comics, they kind of give her a couple of Force visions here and there that she kind of, or like feelings. She walks around Naboo and has like this feeling about like Maul and Padme, and she doesn't know it is Maul. It just kind of shows her having this vision and seeing certain images and things.
Yeah.
So it's mainly just, in short, it's basically, there are lots of little ones, but that's just what happens when you make a big universe. The MCU is riddled with them. But when it's like actual huge big things, aside from Palpatine stuff with Snoke, I don't really think there's any that are major. Most of them either get explained in a comic or book, or you can kind of just almost like don't squint at it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So from I Am Jack's musings, are there any Legends characters that you would want to see in canon?
Now, I have said this before on the show, I don't know that much about Legends. The majority of stuff from Legends that I know comes from playing the video games. I didn't read any of the Legends books. I'm reading a couple at the moment. I'm reading the Book of the Sith, which takes little bits and pieces out of a lot of the old Sith books. There's a Darth Bane trilogy all about the Rule of Two. That's quite a popular book series. There's the Knights of the Old Republic games and things, which goes on about like the ancient Sith, like thousands of years ago, and the Sith and the Jedi Wars, and Darth Revan and Darth Malak, and all these. Not Malak. I think it's Malak. All these different Sith, and there's one nihilist and things that can eat planets, and there's all kinds of craziness. So, and there's loads of Legends. Obviously, it's like 30 plus years of Legend stuff. So I don't know as many things about a lot of the Legend stuff as other people. So my pool is more shallow. But my favourite Legends character is in the game The Force Unleashed, which is what my tattoo is of. Anyone online, I occasionally post it and things. And it's Starkiller / Galen Marek. And he was the secret apprentice of Darth Vader after Revenge of the Sith. It was like halfway between... Oh no, it was towards... Of the 20-year gap between episode 3 and 4, it was like a few years... It was around the time of Rebels. It was about a few years before A New Hope. He has an apprentice that he's secretly training. Palpatine doesn't know about it, and he has to go around and hunt down Jedi. And this guy, Galen Marek, has to kill loads of old Jedi. He kills Shak Ti, who's a member of the Jedi Council. He kills loads of others. And then the first game is him basically, at one point, turning back to the light. And then him basically trying to undermine Vader while under the guise of still being his apprentice. And you fight Vader a couple times, and then you fight Palpatine and stuff. And it's just... It explains how the Rebel Alliance got their symbol in that, but obviously it's Legends, and so it's not true, it's not canon. There's a character called General Kota that's really good, but Rebels basically used a lot of those elements. Star Wars Rebels. There's a General Kota in The Force Unleashed is very, very similar to Kanan. Even, mild spoiler alert, to do with both of them at some point lose their vision. So it's like, there's so many parallels to it.
Yeah.
So that's probably my favourite Legends character, I would say. That's why I've got a tattoo of him as well. But you haven't really watched...
Do you know who I want? I want the Shaggy Jedi.
Oh, yeah, who's in...
There's from Scooby-Doo, there's a character in Legends from the 2D animated Clone Wars
Because I pointed out to you.
series, we watched it the other day. There's...
So he's called
Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. Shaggy, and he's a Jedi.
SHA''A''G''I.
Yeah, I want him. I want to see him in canon.
Yeah, he was actually in the micro series of Clone Wars, the 2D animated one that's under Star Wars Vintage on Disney Plus, which is Legends. There's a character towards the end of Volume 1, which goes up against Grievous. Him and...
the one that looks like Ahsoka.
Kaidi Mundi, Shak Ti is the one who looks like Ahsoka. Ayla Secura, who's a Twi'lek. They all go against him. Grievous, and this guy gets killed by Grievous pretty quickly. He gets wrecked. He is in, Clone Wars Chapter 20, the mini one, and he's also in something called Star Wars Battle for the Republic. Which is a strategy game. I
want to see Shaggy in canon.
That would be a bit of fun. I like those sort of things. Like Obi-Wan's home planet is Stew John, and that's because George Lucas really liked Jon Stewart, and Jon Stewart said he really liked Obi-Wan, and he asked where he came from, and George Lucas said Stew John.
That's funny.
And he's Jon Stewart, so it's just like a silly little thing where it doesn't matter if a planet is called Stew John or not. There's also certain characters that are kind of named after other famous people and things like that. But yeah. That's Legends.
Cool. Now, question 4 is from the great Tony Farina. So, besides Aphra, who is the best character created for the comics?
So in the comics, along with Aphra, there's 000 and BT-1 are pretty cool. I've shown you a few panels of them, which is like basically C-3PO and R2-D2 if they're complete psychopaths and they like actually actively enjoyed killing people. And the
to be fair, R2 doesn't seem like he doesn't not like it.
No, R2 does go
R2
mental.
is ruthless.
In some of the comics as well, he kills a lot of people. But yeah, he basically, 000, he's basically C-3PO, but he's dark grey with red eyes, and he kills people by draining them. He likes to drain their blood. He has like a hand of syringes, and his other hand has got like a buzzsaw on it, like other needles. He injects people with like nerve toxins, and then just tortures them while they can't move, but they can still feel everything. All that sort of stuff is in the comics. Pretty grim. But he's a pretty awesome character from the comics. There's also... This is a character that's going to link in with a question later on, and this is a character who's created in the Star Wars comics Star Wars Legends comics from 1977 or 78, like, so before even Empire Strikes Back came out. There's a character called Beilert Valance, and he's a bounty hunter who's a cyborg. And he is in his own comic series at the moment, and he's been in several miniseries and stuff. And he is now canon again, and they've basically used a lot of elements from the Legends character for him, and I'll go into that a little bit more later. He's a really cool character for the comics. Sana Starros, she is a smuggler who married Han Solo for a, was it like a job? Not quite a job, but they did it as a ruse, like a scheme to get money out of someone.
Fair
and
enough.
they did like a fake wedding. And she's like a smuggler.
But they don't actually get married.
No, she shows up in the comics after, like, I think the end of the first arc of this main run of Star Wars comics, so it's set like weeks after A New Hope.
Yeah.
Hands with Leia, and Sana tracks him and then basically approaches him and says to Leia, like, he's my husband, and he's like, whoa, no, I'm not. And so Leia's really angry at Han because she thinks they're lying. It's always almost like a love triangle before they're all into each other,
right,
in a weird little way. But she's a really interesting character because she actually has a relationship with Doctor Aphra, who is a woman. So it's not in... Because they have these characters that have relationships with men or women, in Star Wars they're a lot more sort of free with it in a lot of ways, especially in the comics. They don't make a big fuss. It makes Sana, she's quite an interesting, vulnerable character because she's hurt by Han for a while, and then she kind of gets over that and hangs out with Luke, Leia and stuff, and helps with rebellion matters and whatnot, but has her own stuff going on. But then she interacts with Aphra because of one reason or another, and then she has this weird draw to Aphra where she hates herself for getting involved with Aphra, because Aphra's this rogue archaeologist who's kind of like Indiana Jones, but kind of bad, and who always, screws people over, that sort of thing. And she kind of has a soft spot for Aphra and kind of lets her off certain things, but shouldn't do. And then she got hurt really badly by Aphra like years before and has a real hump on her back about it. And she has to kind of try and get over that and not let Aphra get to her. And it's all basically the intricacies of being in relationships with people, but in a clever way that's makes the character more interesting.
Plus space.
Yeah. So Sana Starros, she's a great, another character specifically for the comics.
Cool. So the next question is from at Comic Foil. Why is the Dark Horse comic book series X-Wing Rogue Squadron still the best Star Wars title 22 years after it ended?
Now, I have said before that I have not read that much Legends stuff. I know a lot of Legends video games. I know a lot of bits and pieces. So I had to look up Rogue Squadron, unfortunately, because I played the Rogue Squadron games. They were on the N64 originally, and they got re-released on the GameCube, and you fly an X-Wing and you do the Death Star Trench and things like that. And they are very difficult, I'll say that much. But the actual comics themselves, I've not read them, so I can't actually comment on the fact of why they are potentially the best comics. A lot of people, there are certain Legends comics that people do cling to. I would say if people... one of the complaints I've heard is that a lot of the new comics and stuff, there's not that many things surrounding pilots very much, which I'm okay with, because I like, my favourite thing about Star Wars is the Force and lightsaber battles and that sort of spiritual side of things in that realm, and character depth. With pilot stuff, I'm not as interested by space battles and stuff. Like, there's a lot of that in other sci-fi mediums, and that's not why I like sci-fi necessarily. Yeah. I like the tech, but I'm not as excited by ships and things. But I'm just basically getting the Rogue Squadron details up. Because the video game, there are 3 video games, that I remember playing in like the late 90s. And so with the Rogue Squadron comics, the ones that Comic Foil has mentioned, which are published by Dark Horse, it came out in 1995. And it went for 35 issues, and it seems to be primarily starring one of my favourite characters.
Is it Wedge Antilles?
It is Wedge Antilles. No, I haven't read this, actually, so I need to check this out, because I've heard this. I think there's Dark Empire books or comics as well. And there's quite a few Legends comics that a lot of people keep telling me to read, and it's just like, I'm trying to read enough of the canon. I'm trying to, I've read all the canon comics bar the Poe Dameron comics as of yet, and then I need to read some IDW ones, but all the Marvel ones I've read. But there are so many books, and they release like a book every few months. It's like, I can't read quick enough to catch up to all these books they're releasing.
Slow reader.
And also trying to read all of trying to read Legends as well, which is 30, 40 years of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of content to get through.
Yeah, I've heard these comics are good. They're starring Wedge Antilles, released 1995. I don't know why they haven't released anything that's best. I'd say if people are really into pilot stuff, there's the comic book TIE Fighter, which was 4 or 5 issues. That was pretty cool. Followed some TIE Fighter pilots. There's Han Solo Imperial Cadet, and that follows some cadets in the Imperial Academy, including Han Solo and Beilert Valance. Funnily enough, that's when he's first introduced in the canon. So there are some, but it's mainly, I'd say, the Vader comics. They're kind of the good ones to go for. I'd argue they could be better, but I don't know. It depends.
Okay, cool. Next question is from Matthew B. Lloyd. How about the time that Luke and Leia had sex in a splinter in the mind's eye?
Now, I had to look this up because I wasn't aware of what this even was. And I messaged Matt after reading this earlier, and he's on a completely different time zone, and he has not yet responded. So I'm just double checking to see. He didn't respond to it yet, but I basically said I couldn't find record of the fact that they had sex in it. But what I did find out, interestingly enough, is it was the first ever Star Wars book in the expanded universe. So what it was released in 1978. And basically what it was that there was a script called like The Legends of Luke Starkiller, because the original name of Luke Skywalker was going to be Luke Starkiller. George Lucas wrote in 1976 or something. He wrote like this original script for Star Wars, and then it didn't get made. They had to tweak. He tweaked it and stuff and made it eventually what we know Star Wars today. And he excluded all the other tweaks he's done since.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Yeah, generally similar to the Star Wars we have today. But basically, he had this script and they weren't sure if Star Wars was going to be a hit. In fact, most people thought it wasn't going to be a hit at all, and they thought it was just going to bomb. So when they made it, George Lucas basically let this author get a hold of the script. Of the not done Star Wars script, and basically mix parts and elements of it with what they knew was going to be in the Star Wars film to write a sequel book, because they didn't think they were going to have enough money to have a sequel film. Now, the book's written by Alan Dean Foster, and as I said, it's called Splinter of the Mind's Eye, and it's basically Han and Chewie aren't even in it. Luke and Leia go to basically get stranded on this planet and have to escape Darth Vader. That's essentially what it is. But in the book, they get like weirdly flirty with each other, and they have like those like inner monologues, and it says that they have confusing emotions about each other. And this was obviously a year after Star Wars came out. This got released, so it was before Lucas had actually made the decision to make Leia and Luke siblings, which is obviously why they kiss in A New Hope, and it's weird. And I think even at the start of Empire,
I think they only kiss once.
I think they kiss twice altogether. I think she kisses him on the cheek.
I think one's a kiss on the cheek and then one is a kiss on the lips.
Yeah, I think so. But regardless, before George Lucas decided to do that, obviously there were weird threads that they may have some sort of weird romantic attachment. And in that book, it was meant to be like a sequel to Empire, and then it's kind of Empire got made and doesn't necessarily contradict what happened in Splinter of the Mind's Eye. So it was like the first expanded universe title, along with the Star Wars newspaper strips and the Marvel comics, which all were released before Empire came out and before he was even certain Empire was even going to be a thing. So Luke and Leia, to my knowledge, haven't actually had sex, unless there's another piece of content or it is in there, and every review and article I've read about it doesn't mention it. But yeah, I don't think they did, but obviously it's still probably a bit too close, because Lucas didn't tell the author what he was planning on doing because he hadn't made his mind up yet. Yeah.
Okay, so question 7 is from I Am Jack's Musings. Do you think the latest main Star Wars comics run will detail the machinations behind the plot to rescue Han?
Basically, will the new Star Wars comics give the details of how they rescued Han from Jabba's palace in Return of the Jedi? So it's basically referring to, in the new canon, I think comic releases were late 2014, but early 2015 primarily. The main run of Star Wars comics ran for 75 issues, and that was set between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, so episodes 4 and 5. The run that's going on now, that's written by Charles Soule. The previous run was written by a couple of different people. I think Kieran Gillen wrote it towards the end. I can't remember who wrote it to begin with. Jason Aaron, I think, and then Kieran Gillen. And Charles Soule's writing it now, but the one going on now that's on its like 10th issue or so, that is set between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. I heard in an interview of Charles Soule that they're not going to go into the details of how Luke got his green lightsaber, because the author, Charles Soule, still feels like the deleted scene in Return of the Jedi where Luke's in a cave sorting out his lightsaber, he counts that as when Luke made his lightsaber, and he doesn't view that as not being canon in his mind, so he is allowing that to be the thing, which is fine. I'd rather see Luke do it, but who knows, he might just be teasing or whatever.
The thing is that it's just a little bit of extra detail that you don't need. Like, you don't need to see why his lightsaber's suddenly a different color. Like, you don't.
Would be getting
you don't need
him
to see
getting
that
his
happen.
kyber crystal and him building the lightsaber. It's one thing.
But, like, it's something that we've seen before. Like, you don't need to see the same thing.
Yeah, we've seen it in Clone Wars, and I think we see it in Rebels, but most audiences haven't seen it. But then again, most people who haven't watched Clone Wars or Rebels aren't going to be reading comics.
Exactly.
Generally speaking, most comic readers have seen either Clone Wars, Rebels, or both. But the question was about the plan to rescue them. I don't know. There is a comic out which is the Age of series, and the Age of Rebellion, which is the one-shot comics about characters from the Rebellion. I did an episode about it. I think episode 47. So a few weeks ago, and there's the Leia comic. So it's Age of Rebellion, Princess Leia. It goes into detail about her and Lando and Chewie going to Jabba's palace once, like when she's got her bounty hunter gear on. But it's about her getting her bounty hunter gear initially and having to pretend to be the character she played, which I think is called Bosch. Has to play that character Bosch in front of Bosk to trick him for some reason or another. So you can read that, and that'll give you a little bit of information. It's not a bad comic. But at the moment, it probably will. I mean, it's only about a year between episode 5 and 6. And so I don't know if they're going to go into depths about the plan to rescue Han or not. They are kind of talking about how they keep needing to go to Tatooine, but things keep popping up and they can't do this and can't do that. And I think there's other storylines and bits and pieces, threads they're going to get to, but I think they probably will. Like, I know you don't read the comics, but like, do you care how they rescued Han?
No, not really. I don't know. Like,
is there anything you'd want to see that, like,
I mean, it would be interesting to see how it happened, but like, I don't feel the need to have every part of it filled. Well, it's the same thing with the lightsaber, like you were just saying, like, you really want to see it happen, whereas I don't really care. Like, like, I saw the deleted scene where he changes the lightsaber, and to me, it didn't add anything. So it's just kind of like, okay, cool. He's got a different colour lightsaber now.
Is there anything at the moment in canon that you haven't seen that you would want? Like, even if it's like a gap in time, like, for example, between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones with more training of Anakin, or between this film and this film. Like, is there any time period or scene that you haven't seen that you'd want to?
The only thing that I'd be interested in seeing is some of Anakin's training when he was younger. But I imagine he's just going to be whiny, like he is in every single film. So
that's a fair point.
Like, I don't feel like I need to see anything else. The only things that I really enjoyed seeing that frustrates me that it's not always in the cut is the extended version of Revenge of the Sith, because it has loads of like secret. So are they deleted scenes, or is it? Yeah. So there's a version that we watched where all of the deleted scenes are included in the movie, and I really liked it because because in the third film, to me, without those scenes, Padme is just kind of a bit of a doormat, really.
Yeah, wet blanket.
She's a bit of a wet blanket. She doesn't really have that much character to her. And then when you see her in the previous films, or if you see her in the Clone Wars series, you see that she is a badass. Whereas in this film, she's just like, oh, Annie. And it's just like, come on, like, have a bit of backbone. But the deleted scenes that we watched show her having like secret meetings with people from the Senate to try and essentially override what Palpatine is doing.
Yeah.
And like
with Bail Organa.
And you see all of those people that are connected to the rebellion trying to do this good thing, but it's not in the final cut of the movie.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed seeing those things, but it's annoying that it's not in the normal cut.
Yeah, it's like a whole 10
I know that wasn't the question that you asked me.
No, but it's like a whole 10-minute long subplot about Padme and Bail Organa trying to get rid of Palpatine's power, and I think they basically vaguely realise they won't be able to do it, so they have to try and make other arrangements, I think is what they kind of alluded to, and that's the sort of the first ideas of the rebellion, is them kind of doing things under the radar. I
suppose if there's anything that I would want to see is little things like that. But then I don't really care about politics either, so it's surprising that I enjoyed those bits of the film.
I think it adds weight to Padme and Bail Organa. My favourite, the era I want them to explore the most is between episode 6 and 7. I want to see loads of stuff about Luke, like at the Jedi Temple. I want to see Kylo. I'd like to see a movie. I'd be happy to watch a movie. They'll almost definitely never do this, but I would be happy to see like a Kylo Ren movie where it starts
where
off,
it's Luke Skywalker's like training schools.
Yeah, and the ending is him like maybe at the Jedi Temple, striking loads of people down. It just ends in a real dark note, almost like Joker or the end of Rogue One in a way. You know, where you've got this sort of slow burn where you're just watching Kylo Ren from a young age have like a bad relationship with Han, have Leia being busy, being in politics and all these sorts of other things, and then having Luke.
You just want to see more Kylo Ren.
I love Kylo Ren. But then you get to see Luke going around doing what he does in the comics in the Rise of Kylo Ren comics, which are excellent.
Yeah, but I don't really like Luke that much.
Yeah,
excuse me.
But like, I would just like to see Luke going around with like Lawson Tekka and Kylo Ren and going to loads of old Jedi sites and excavating them. What's the term? Excavating them, and doing all that sort of stuff, and watching Kylo slowly get seduced by the dark side, like get Snoke whispering in his ear. And,
that would be cool.
Yeah. What's the next question then?
Okay, so penultimate question is from Matthew B. Lloyd. Have comic stories from Legends been brought into canon?
So there's certain aspects. There's the ones which are... There's a lot of legend stories that have been brought into canon. The biggest ones are things of Thrawn, because they've Thrawn in Rebels and Thrawn in The Mandalorian takes a lot from when Thrawn was created in the Heir to the Empire books by Timothy Zahn in the late 80s and early 90s, I think. And it was basically the original book sequels to the original trilogy. And they're set like 5 to 10 years after, I think it is. And the thing is, what they're basically doing now is in The Mandalorian, what it seems like, and with the Ahsoka series and all these other things, they're basically building a series around a big event. And the big event is basically going to be Thrawn coming back. And that is probably going to be very similar plotline-wise to what happened in these Heir to the Empire books.
Right.
I think that's going to be a big thing. Aside from that, there's in the comics, like the original Star Wars comics, I haven't read a huge amount of them, but the character I mentioned earlier, Beilert Valance, he's a cyborg bounty hunter. He's like half machine. He's got like half his face looks like a robot, and he basically starts off as like a bad guy, and then because he has this massive hate of droids and he hates himself and all these other things, and he has a conflict with Luke, I think, and then basically he eventually kind of sacrifices himself to save people. That's generally his plot in the Legends comics. And then in the modern canon, so you get him in Han Solo Imperial Cadet, he's definitely an antagonist, he sucks. Then right at the very end, he has like a mild turning point. Then you get the Target Vader comics, which is the bounty hunters going after Vader, I think just before the Battle of Hoth. I think it's just before or just after Empire Strikes Back. And in that, you get more flashbacks to him and him being in the Imperial Army and becoming a better person and blah, blah, blah. And now he's a bounty hunter that's kind of like, he will kill people fairly non-discriminately, but only when they kind of start something with him. Like, he doesn't take joy out of killing people.
And that's someone in the canon.
Yeah. Yeah. He was created. He's one of the oldest Star Wars characters there is. In the Star Wars comics in 78, which is before most Star Wars characters. That was before the franchise was even really a thing.
Yeah.
It's just after the first film and some comics and stuff. So Beilert Valance is probably the biggest one, I'd say. And Thrawn. Thrawn is pretty massive, I'd say. Thrawn was the biggest one, and then in general Legends to canon, I think, and then Beilert Valance. He's the biggest one from the comic.
Cool. Then we're on to the last question, which is from Dave Horrocks. What is the biggest surprise moment / oh my god moment in all Star Wars comics since 2015?
Right, so I'll say the comics ones first, and then you can say what the biggest one is outside of the comics. So in the comics, it's probably in Darth Vader number, I think it's number 6. It's like, no, I think it's Darth Vader number 5. It's either Darth Vader number 5 or 6. I think it might be 5. And it's basically when Vader bleeds his lightsaber crystal. That's just insane. It's in the Charles Soule run, 2017, of Darth Vader comics. And he beats a Jedi at the first few issues of him finding a Jedi, beating him, and etc. And then he gets his crystal and then just takes him. And there's almost no dialogue in the whole comic. It's just him walking and having force visions and things and trying to like bleed this lightsaber crystal by pushing all of his like hatred and anger into it and stuff to turn the crystal red. And it's just such a powerful set of panels. The artwork is absolutely incredible. And it was like, whoa, because before that happened, the red crystals didn't have an explanation in canon. In Legends, lightsaber crystals were synthetic. So Sith, instead of getting a kyber crystal from one of those planets like Ilum or whatever, instead of going there and getting one of their own and just going red, or taking a Jedi's one and bleeding it, which is what is in the new canon, they would just create their own lightsaber crystals. And if you create your own crystal, it is almost always red. I think that's kind of because it's like this unnatural thing. Yeah, and that's what it was in Legends. So lightsaber bleeding is a new thing in the canon, and it's only in the Darth Vader comics, the Rise of Kylo Ren comic, both by Charles Soule. And then also in the Ahsoka book, she cleanses the lightsabers, which is why she has white lightsaber crystals. So you can cleanse a previously bled crystal. And also in the High Republic books, there's a Jedi character who has this ancient Sith spear from like thousands of years ago, and she cleansed it as well. So it's lots of cool little threads, and that's in the book by Charles Soule. So he's like the bleeding king.
The bleeding king.
The bleeding king. So that was the biggest moment in that.
In comics, for you.
In the comics, yeah. The Kylo Ren one was pretty intense as well, but you know, there are some really cool moments. There's mainly with Vader, but there's some really cool like Aphra stuff where it's really clever and fun. And there's a story that's ongoing in the main run of Star Wars comics and that 2017 Darth Vader run. And both of them, there's a plot line which is basically you've got Vader going to Mon Cala, where Admiral Akbar and stuff is.
The Mon Calamari.
Yeah, and he goes down there to the Chorin and the Mon Cala, and basically he goes there and enslaves all their people. And then the comics that were coming out at the same time was of the main run of Star Wars comics, which was set after A New Hope, which is 20 years later. So you're getting Vader in 1 week. You'll get one month. You get one comic which is showing Vader taking over Mon Cala, killing its leaders, destroying it, and enslaving its people. And then you've got in the Star Wars comics 20 years later them going to this city, these people that have been held down by the Empire for 20 years, and all their leaders are gone except like one.
Yeah.
And they're trying to convert them to the rebellion, and they're saying, we've suffered too much from the Empire, we can't fight back, that sort of thing. And it's really clever that you're reading one plot line and another, and they're both connecting.
Yeah, that's cool.
So that was very cool. In all of Star Wars, nice way to sort of round it up, the biggest surprise moment in all of Star Wars, I mean, Han Solo dying and being Kylo Ren's dad, that was pretty big in The Force Awakens.
I mean, yes, I do agree. I was thinking about when Han Solo dies. Like, that was an oh my god moment. I'm pretty sure when we watched it the first time I cried when he died. Yeah, so yeah, I guess so. I can't really think of anything else in Star Wars specifically that's made me go, oh my god. The only other time that I can really think about is when it's in the Clone Wars series.
You're talking about
the bombing and Ahsoka and just the Jedi.
There's a whole arc.
There's an arc about Ahsoka. And
it's one of the best bits of all Star Wars.
I don't think I've ever felt more emotion for Star Wars than I did in that moment.
You're like yelling at the TV.
I was getting really, really animated about it. So yeah, probably those two. But the Ahsoka one in that arc of
in Series 5, we won't spoil what happens, but
it's so goddamn good.
Yeah, the Jedi Temple gets bombed, and basically
Ahsoka
gets blamed for it, essentially.
One of the main reasons that I'm mad about that episode in particular is because I predicted what was going to happen, and I said it to Mike right at the beginning of the episode, and I was like, this is what's going to happen. I think this is going to happen. And then Mike does this thing where he stays neutral so that I won't know what happens, so that I can still enjoy it. But he said something that made me think that I was wrong. So then I didn't think that what I thought was going to happen, and then it did. So then I was just really angry because I had guessed it right the entire time, and then I led myself because Mike made a comment to think that I wasn't correct. But it was a it's very emotional, moving piece of Star Wars.
It's probably it's the most important story about Ahsoka in all of Star Wars.
Oh, for sure.
Say. When you see Ahsoka in Mandalorian,
well, it kind of defines her character, really, doesn't it?
It completely defines who she is as a character and her relationship with the Jedi. It's so beautifully done. It's like the ending of Clone Wars Series 7 and the finale of Series 2 of Rebels. Those three
parts. The ending of Rebels is...
Yeah, but I mean to do specifically... Oh, you mean with another stuff with Ahsoka as well? That specific...
Yeah, another oh my god moment, to be fair, is when Order 66 happens.
That is pretty...
Like when... Well, actually, let's go back to that. Go back to the first question of this entire thing. What's the best sequence from canon so far? That's one of the best sequences from canon.
I did say Order 66.
You did say Order 66. No, Order 66 is probably one of the... most oh my god moments. It's better, like, I think for me, especially because I've watched the Clone Wars series and then Cody turns on Obi-Wan. You're like, Cody, what are you doing? Like, you're friends? Like, so yeah, I think.
And then it makes the finale of Series 7 of the Clone Wars. There's a whole thing when Order 66 happens in the Clone Wars, and it is absolutely phenomenal. Some of the best Star Wars there is. You literally go on IMDb, the last 4 episodes of Season 7 of the Clone Wars, they're all over 9.5.
Yeah, just even
unheard of.
the complete lead up to how Order 66 happened.
Because you get so much more backstory.
It's just fantastic.
You get so much backstory with inhibitor chips and this whole conspiracy surrounding
Oh, it's
the clones.
so good. I forgot how good it was.
Yeah, it's not as simple as just, the clones just suddenly decided and went bad. And it's like, in Legends, there's whole stories about clones, like,
yeah, because I remember...
That's what the Bad Batch is going to take.
Well, yeah, but I remember watching... So obviously when we first got together, I had not seen episodes 2 and 3.
No.
So I hadn't seen Order 66, like that hadn't happened. I didn't know that it even really existed. Like, so when I saw that for the first time, I was like, oh my God, like that's crazy. And then I remember watching the Clone Wars animated series and being like, well, Cody's a baddie because he's going to turn on Obi-Wan. I was like, well, I know that Cody's a baddie. And Mike was like, you need to watch it. He was like, it's more complicated than that.
Yeah, that's the only breadcrumb I would give you. I was like, I'm not going to tell you anything else, but you just need to keep watching and things will make more sense. And we got to like Series 5 and you're like, why do I still not know this? And I was like, just literally wait, because it's in Series 6. It's like the middle arc or the starting arc of Series 6 when 5 kind of gets involved a little bit with
so good.
Conspiracy. And it is like, oh my God. Absolutely incredible. Yeah, I think... Obviously, Mandalorian, the finale of Series 2 of Mandalorian is one of those big moments. The Darth Vader
scene
bleeding.
with Baby Yoda.
Yeah. I mean, even Baby Yoda was quite a big surprise moment. No, it was one of the best kept secrets in Star Wars. Yeah. No one had any idea about Baby Yoda or Grogu until people saw him.
Another one, an oh my God moment is when Baby Yoda is just chomping away on some eggs that are like these people, this species' last family members remaining, and Grogu is there just like munching away on their babies.
Oh yeah, that was amazing. But yeah, I think that's relatively all the questions that we've now been. I mean, this part 2 is like 45 minutes. Part 1 was like half an hour, so we've been talking for like an hour and 15 minutes, which is pretty good out of 9 Star Wars questions. Pretty good, not 9.
There was 9 questions today.
Part. And yesterday there were 6, so it was 15.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good solid number. There are 15 Star Wars questions, hour and 15 minutes, if I stopped it now, which I'm not going to.
Well, this is why I last so long, is because you ramble.
Yeah, it's time for the end ramble. So I'm just going to say, coming up in next week, I've got the next Doctor Aphra comics, and that is issues 20 to 25, I think I'm tackling. Then the week after that, I think I'm doing the Age of Resistance. I think I'm doing the villains, so I'll be doing like Kylo Ren, Phasma, Hux, and Snoke. So I'll be doing those. Then the week after that will be Star Wars again, the main run of Star Wars comics. Then the week after that will be the Canon miniseries, the first part of that, because there's 12 comics for that, and I'll be doing part 1 of that. Then after that, it will be back to Doctor Aphra.
You just said that so many times.
I normally do.
You said that a crazy amount of times.
Yeah, I know. It's trying to remember all the things. So, it's, in brief, Aphra next week. Week after that is Megan drinking water loudly.
In brief, next week's going to be Star Wars. The week after that's going to be Star Wars. Then, can you guess? It's going to be Star Wars.
It will be. It will be. Aphra, Age of Heroes, Star Wars, Canon, Aphra. Well, actually, I say Age of Heroes. It's Age
oh my God, this is why
villains.
Your podcast is so long.
It's because I can't be able to edit the end parts. Because trying to get all of the stuff I need to remember to tell people. Also, I was on 20th Century Geek recently and I did the Desert Island comics, so make sure you check that out. And also, me and Megan went on 20th Century Geek a few weeks ago. It got released, the Batman retrospective, which me and Megan watched loads and loads of Batman films.
Yes.
And Megan loved it.
I wouldn't say loved.
Love is a strong word. But then also make sure I've got a Patreon. Make sure I've got a Patreon.
Make sure you have a Patreon. Yeah. Make sure we all have a Patreon.
We can all have a Patreon and all donate the same amount of money to each other. And then no one will benefit except Patreon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good.
I have a Patreon, patreon.com/genuine chit-chat. The link is in the description. If you liked this sort of massive rambly style thing that me and Megan have done, we release a podcast called Afterthoughts twice a week under the Patreon. They're normally about 10-15 minutes long-ish. Some of them go up to like 20-25 minutes. 2 get released a week. Normally one of them is like an MCU movie or a Star Wars movie, and another one is either a documentary or a chick flick or a film that just isn't owned by Disney specifically. That's what we try and do. So we release 2 of them a week at the moment. So if you liked our back and forth, then, you can pay as little as £2 a month or $3 a month, and you get access to the feed, which has, there's early access to things. There's snippets I put on there. The Star Wars book review I did got released a day early over there. And my Genuine Chit-Chat episodes, when I split them in two and etc., you get all of them at once. So it's just lots of little bits
What
and
bargain,
pieces.
everyone.
It's great.
Go now, quickly, grab your purses and wallets, all get to your laptop, type in patreon.com slash genuine chit-chat.
And then you can listen to our afterthoughts twice a week, and there's loads up there at the moment now. I think we're on past episode 10.
Right, so quick, go everyone, now, run,
go,
quickly.
Yeah, that's basically it from me. Do you want to give your Instagram handle so people can follow what we eat every day?
I mean, now I have to because you've introduced it.
Yep.
I don't have a podcast, everyone, because I'm boring. So I do have an Instagram account, though, and if you are so inclined following me on social media, it is Grits Gets Fit, which is, Mike always tells me to spell it out, so GRITTS Gets Fit. And it's all about my health and weight loss journey, and you will see pictures of delicious food on there, everyone. I'm a fantastic cook.
Cheers.
Yeah, it's food and tortoises and...
Food, tortoises, and you...
And me sweaty after exercise, yeah.
Yeah, that's basically
What a treat.
It's a delight. My favourite Instagram to follow. And you can find me at Genuine Chit-Chat on Instagram, Twitter, and on Facebook. There's my other podcast, Genuine Chit-Chat, which is on its own little feed. But wherever you're listening to this, if you're listening on YouTube, you're in the right place already, because all of the Comics in Canon and Genuine Chit-Chat episodes are all in the same place. If not, just if you're on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcast, wherever you're listening to Comics in Motion, you can listen to Genuine Chit-Chat. So go and check that out. Thank you so much for listening, guys. I really appreciate all of you for sending in your questions. It's a lot of fun. And I'll talk to you next week. Megan will only talk to you if you are on Patreon, really. That's it.
Yeah, if you want
to,
if you want to continue hearing my voice, as I've said, go get your wallets, go to Patreon, and then you can hear me on the reg.
And Megan thinks she's hilarious.
I don't think I'm hilarious. I know I'm hilarious.
So you get to hear Megan hearing herself be hilarious on Patreon as well.
Yeah.
£2 a month, guys. All this free content from Comics in Motion, from me on Star Wars Comics in Canon, Genuine Chit-Chat, all the guest spots I do. All of these things, guys, are public service. So donate, and you get even more.
You get to listen to more of Mike's rambles.
How much more do you want of my voice? Because you can get more. There's always more. And if I get even more Patreons, we'll do even more.
If someone gives me £100, you can have him.
That's the next Patreon tier. It's £100 a month, and you get me.
You get a date with Mike.
It's not a date. You just get me.
You just get Mike.
I just appear at your house, and you have to take care of me like a Furby,
like a pet.
Yeah. I just come with nothing but the clothes on my back.
Nice.
No, I'm not going to do that.
Cool.
What are you doing?
You have a hair on your face, and I was getting it.
You need to pull that off mid-recording. Outrageous, this is. Outrageous.
Right, you're going to cut this bit out.
No, I'm not. Bye, guys.
Bye.